Hello, welcome to GLLR. This is George. Welcome to the channel. I wanted to talk today about the Ram 1500. This is the 1500 Classic. The 1500 Classic is a work truck. It's a V8 Hemi, 395 horsepower. And the idea of this truck is to be able to be a work truck. So this type of truck is going to give you everything that you need for a truck and not give you the things that you don't. The one thing that I would say in terms of the bed liner is I would have either a spray paint bed liner. I would have probably just an add-on bed liner, something to protect it if you're going to make it into a work truck. Other than that, is very basic. It has basically cloth seats, no navigation system, basic infotainment system, basic gauges, no type of lane keep assistance. Let's talk about the inside of the Ram 1500. So first thing that you'll notice is for this one does not have the option of the step bar that someone will give. So the height from the ground is significant for some folks. I think that for those of you who can just basically have it for me, which I'm 5'10", it pretty much the level of the pickup is about where my knees hit, a little bit up below my knees. So you're basically stepping up on a height that is approximately that of knee height. And to get up here, there is this grab handle just to be able to reach up there. Again, no big deal. I think having the ground clearance is not a bad thing. The other thing that you need to consider is the fact that the truck does not give you any other special features that you would want. So let's start talking about that. First thing is the park, reverse, neutral, and drive. There is no lever, there is no shifter. You just get this knob right here. Somewhat different. Many car makers are doing that today. Pros and cons. Really, you get a little bit more space by putting it there and not in the center console. What we have in the center console is this very large area that has the storage, some cup holders, but nevertheless you can also flip it up and you have the ability to sit another passenger here in addition to the passenger down by the window on the other end. You have in the far side, you basically have two glove compartments, one above and one below. And again, your basic storage there. Over here in the center console, besides the very large buttons for climate controls, entertainment, you have the 12 volt connectors on each side. Actually, this one's a USB. This drawer in the middle that gives you a little bit more storage. And then quite a few blank buttons here that you'll probably get if you have more options. You just got to have the tow haul and the traction control enable or disable button. Now if you look over in the back seat, the area in the back seat is fairly generous for a truck of this size. You have a seating that is somewhat upright. So I'm going to get in here and show you the distance from where I sit to the back. So I'm sitting behind myself. I'm 5'10", and I have plenty of space. I would figure someone up to maybe 6'5" should be okay in a truck of this size. It's again very basic but spacious enough. You have some cup holders that are underground. It's a little plasticky but does the job. I wouldn't want to have it that far down. I'd rather have something that maybe comes back from the center arm and becomes an armrest with the cup holders in the area. And then you have some climate vents that come again close to the ground. I would prefer them a little bit higher, but I see why they were installed down below, because when this console flips up and it becomes the passenger, the third passenger in the front, or the third person to ride in the front, then you have no room for those air vents, hence the reason why they had to mount them that far low. So again, all in all, it gets the job done. I think you have a little bit of a window here that in some other vehicles is automatic by pressing a button, and this one is manual. So a few hooks on the top and dome light in the very back. So what is the driving experience, or what is it like to drive the Ram 1500? What is it like to have a vehicle that does not give you all the features that you would normally want, or you would normally not really need but you may want? So let's go ahead and take a ride and see what it's like. Now let's talk about the driving experience. Having the amount of power that it has for a vehicle like this, 395 horsepower, and a vehicle of this size and weight, I would expect that it would not be particularly quick off the gate. So let's see how much it punches you if you punch it. So just starting out, the first thing that I notice is that it does have some punch right out of the gate. It is pretty close to instantaneous torque. It's not quite instantaneous because it's not an electric car, but it is power that you feel at low RPMs. And this is because this engine, this Hemi engine, is naturally aspirated. So it is interesting to notice that there is no lag from the time that I press the accelerator, or maybe very little lag, and the time that the vehicle begins to punch you back. Now let's test this at a little bit longer range. The sound, I don't know if you can hear that, but the sound is quite impressive. For a truck like this, usually is not part of the goal of the automaker to make it sound a particular way. That's usually something that is reserved for sports cars. Nevertheless, you can hear it. It is quite pleasant. It punches you somewhat. I would say that for someone who has a truck like this loaded with 5 passengers and there's a load in the back, you're not going to feel this. Obviously, this vehicle is empty, hence the reason why it is loaded the way it punches you the way that it does. But it is better than I've seen in other vehicles in the past. Again, a 5.7 liter V8 will do that. I would probably like this to have a little bit more power, but if your goal is to have a work truck and have a good driving experience, a pleasant driving experience, this vehicle is for you. Now my thoughts on the transmission. The automatic transmission that it has and the way that it shifts and how it feels when it shifts is quite subtle. I would say that it's somewhat dynamic in the sense that when you're accelerating slow, the shifting is not very noticeable, and I think that it's not a bad thing. If it's being driven a little bit harder and you punching it more, you're going to feel it, and you're going to see those changes. They're going to be more abrupt. So this is probably, I would rank it as your average behavior that you would see in a transmission of this type for a vehicle of this kind. Now let's talk about the steering. The steering in this vehicle is positive to a degree, and what I mean with that is that you do feel where the front end is when you're driving and you're changing lanes or you're making a turn. At faster speeds is not as perceptible. The next thing that I wanted to talk to you is the turning radius is surprisingly smaller for a vehicle of this size. The wheelbase is quite long, and being able to make a U-turn in a 4-lane road was quite possible without reaching the curb. That sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, and you have to do it at a slower speed on some other trucks. In this truck, it would handle it quite well. Now let's talk a little bit about the comfort. the cloth seats, regardless of the material, the seats themselves are fairly comfortable. They're very upright, and the limitations that they have, and it's again because this is a basic vehicle, it only has 2 positions. You can move the seats forward and back, and you can move the backrest forward and back. Outside of that, there's no lumbar support, there is no lateral support, there is no headrest adjustment unless you move it by hand. There are no levers for that. But I would probably say that the needs of 80% of most folks would be met in terms of the distance from the pedals to your feet, and the distance of the steering wheel to your hands. The steering wheel does pivot up and down, but it's not telescoping. It doesn't. So you have to find that trade-off between the distance from your hands and the wheel and in your body, and those of your legs. For those of you who need to be stretched out so that you don't get cooped up and your knees are not bent when you're driving very closely. If you stretch that quite a bit, then your arms are going to be stretched out, and I've observed some folks that they're driving down the road and their arm is completely straight like this because the wheel is really far. But if I can grab the steering wheel and bend my elbow a bit, that's the sweet spot for me. And I think this truck, from a comfort perspective, it does that. The wheel, the width of the wheel, again, it depends on people's hands, but for me it is a medium width. It's got the ridges in the back where you get to see, or you feel where your fingers, your finger grooves can match and get a good purchase of the wheel. And the material, though, is a plastic material. It does have some texture to it, and it gets it done. Now, having said that, this wheel, because it's not a heated wheel in cold temperature, this is going to feel like a block of ice, and you'll probably want to drive with gloves. And I think that these vehicles are designed so that folks that are wearing gloves don't have to remove them. Hence the reason why the knobs are very large, and you can basically operate everything in the dashboard with gloves. That was a quick review, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is the GLLR channel. My name is George, and as always, drive safe.